You've had Daryl Shaw on talking about Gasworx. What's your feeling about that project?
Oh my gosh. I think we are so lucky to have a team spearheading a project of that size who actually gives a crap about, I know I can't swear on this podcast.
We can cut it out.
gives a crap about the community because it's a very historically sensitive area.
Yeah.
You know, my family came here from Sicily and to Ebor City and rolled cigars. And so for these new people that were not born here to come into the city and recognize that history and express it in their project, that makes me feel confident that the project will be respectful as it grows and develops.
Welcome to Money Market, a Bank of Tampa podcast. We highlight the businesses, expert business advice, the local economy, points of interest in the Tampa Bay market. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and wherever you find your favorite podcast. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend or colleague. I am your host, Owen LaFave, the Pinellas County Market President for the Bank of Tampa, Tampa Bay's oldest and largest community bank. Today's guest is Garrett Greco. You likely know him as the host of the wildly successful Tampa Developer Podcast, a show that has become essential listening for anyone interested in the region's explosive development landscape. Garrett is also a successful realtor, a real estate investor, and given that combination, he sits at the intersection of real estate, policy, storytelling, and provides incredible access to projects redefining our skyline. He was recently named the 40 Under 40 honoree, and also is a fifth-generation Tampanian, and comes from a Tampa political royalty background. Garrett, welcome to Money Market.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to do this. And we were talking about before the podcast that every time people mention my podcast, your name comes up immediately thereafter. And I thought, like, why not have Garrett on the podcast? So,
yeah. When you reached out, it was a no-brainer because I think you mentioned like, you're the Adam Carolla to my Joe Rogan or whatever you said. But yeah, it's like, I think podcasting is awesome and we need more people to do it. So I'm happy to be here and talk to you today.
I agree. Well, I mean, we're both passionate about our community. So I'm excited to highlight that. And your area is really my passion too. My background is real estate banking, although I'm responsible for a lot of other things at the bank. Want to get into the podcast.
Sure.
We'll definitely get into that. But also want to talk about your journey. So you got into real estate initially. I mean, so was that because of your grandfather? I mean, your dad was a judge, right? So why not law and why real estate?
Well, I definitely wanted to do law, and my dad had me over to the courthouse. He was a judge at the time, right around the time I graduated undergrad. And
where'd you go to school?
Florida State.
Okay.
And he had me to the courthouse, and I sat in the courtroom with him and kind of watched everything. And he was like, look, law school is expensive. I'm not paying for it. Times have changed. Best you can do type thing is like be at the state attorney's office or suck it up in private practice, and that's a grind and everything. Yeah, he
threw a wet blanket on it.
And it was actually kind of funny because while he was saying that, another judge walked up, "Hey, Judge Greco, how you doing? Blah blah." And he said the exact same thing too. He was like, "Don't do it. Like the legal industry's changed, blah blah." And so, I've always been business oriented. I've always wanted to make money and be creative and build something. And the other, I think, industry my family was in was real estate. My mom was a realtor. Her mom was a realtor. And so I kind of watched growing up my mom sell homes, and she did some wholesaling in the 90s and early 2000s. And I used to go around to estate sales with her. And my mom has a funny story of driving me around as a little kid. I would point to houses and say, "That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, Mom." So I was always entrenched in like the I guess legal industry with my dad and his friends and politics, but then also real estate. And I always wanted to be a real estate broker deals, and have ownership of real estate. I thought it would be cool to build some sort of a portfolio. And so when I learned more about the legal industry and maybe why that wasn't a good fit, I decided to get my real estate license while I was still in college and join with my mother, who was at Michael Saunders and Company in Sarasota. And she was doing very well. But when I started work with her, I saw this shift in the industry, and it was right around, this was a little over 10 years ago, but Zillow was coming online and some of these online platforms that were sucking away a lot of leads and changing the industry. And it was sort of hard for brokers at that time to capture 30-40% of the commission share of their agents. And so I told my mom and some of her clients, like, look, it's probably a good idea we do this independently. Like, I'll get my broker's license, I'll run the legal and the administrative and the marketing and all that for the brokerage, and you just focus on selling real estate. And that's what we did. It took a few years to convince everybody that would be a good idea and I wouldn't screw it up, but that's what I did. And
so you're still working with your mom to this day? Okay.
Yeah.
How was that? I mean, that's interesting.
It's been a journey. Started out for the first few years with my mom and her clients and making sure I didn't screw that up. Just to give context, she was selling 15, 18 million a year in volume. And a few years ago, she hit over 60 and our firm hit over 100 million.
That's incredible.
So it's worked out really, really well. But I focused initially on not screwing up her business and trying to do a good job. I was super young. I was like 25 years old. And then I decided, I want to be like Ryan Serhant. I want to grow this brokerage and do this thing and that whole deal. And so I bought my first commercial property here in Tampa a few years ago, built an office out, hired a bunch of agents. We had 18 agents in this office, 30 agents total at our brokerage. And if people follow the show, they probably know the brokerage industry's gone through some challenges in the last few years, lawsuits and some big industry changes. And so the last few years, I've focused less on brokerage and more on real estate investing and a development project I'm working on.
Interesting. Touch on the commission piece of it, because I know that changed, but like in hindsight, and I forget who just recently did the study, commissions really haven't changed that much. And we all thought there was going to be this big monumental change.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, like, I recognize volume is tremendously down, so people aren't making as much money, but it really it hasn't impacted commissions yet.
Well, it's all about antitrust, right? There's been long established law that brokerages cannot get together and say, okay, nobody charge any less than 3% or 6%, right? That's kind of how that whole lawsuit started. The industry standard, which you're not allowed to say, but I'm just using it in the general sense, was 6% commission. Yeah. Like you said, commissions haven't gone down. Why you're saying that is because there's been that certain standard commission, right?
Okay. So it's like unspoken. Everyone kind of agrees that this is where the market should be.
I wouldn't even go that far. I would say that our firm charges 6%. That's what we charge, but it's harder to justify a higher commission when a buyer knows as much as you do about the particular property. Mm-hmm. And so a buyer can look up how many square feet, when the property was bought, what the house next door sold for. So when we come to the table to provide value to a client, we have to come with more intrinsic knowledge, neighborhood knowledge, contractual knowledge, negotiating knowledge, just different forms of value to the client. And that's a little bit harder to justify.
And probably selling past Zillow, because Zillow's often not the values aren't great.
And they even had a guy that used to work at Zillow. I think he was one of I think he might have been the chief technology officer. He's starting a new AI platform where people can buy homes without a realtor at all.
Interesting.
And the whole screwed up thing really for me is our association, the National Association of Realtors, sort of sold our data and made partnerships through IDX with Zillow and these other platforms. Yeah. So as a broker, we would put a property on the MLS and MLS would take that data and feed it to Zillow. Well, that's sort of an issue. Now we don't really control the market.
Right.
And so buyers just come to the table with a ton of knowledge, which is great for the public. I think it's a good thing, but sort of bad and challenging for the industry, for the brokerage industry. Being a real estate agent is still a great job, but as a broker, to hire 30, 40, 50 agents, the numbers have shifted really dramatically. And for a new brokerage to get started today, it's just, I would say, harder than ever.
And so you pivoted and moved into the investment space.
Yeah, still do brokerage, still, run, try to manage my mom's business. I think we have 16 licensees that I still manage, but for the most part, my hours are spent on my development project I'm working on, the investments I own, and then this podcast that has sort of unraveled in front of me.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your take on the market? I mean, you got your fingers on the pulse of everywhere. I mean, are we stabilizing? Are we retrenching a little bit?
Well, First, I would say that I'm very faithful in the Tampa Bay market as a whole. I think we're the most insulated market in the country.
Fourth most diverse economy in the country.
Most diverse economy. Yeah, who did I just have on the show that was talking about that? I think it was Jim Moeller.
Okay. Yeah.
At JLL. Yeah, and he was kind of going through these facts and figures. But yeah, we're super insulated. I think our market does not have the challenges other larger markets do. Around the country. And as people move out of those markets, they've identified our market as a great place to consider. So you've always had this natural migration to our area, and now you have an even deeper migration because of those pressures from other markets coming in. And whenever you have an influx of people, an influx of demand, you're going to be able to combat any sort of supply issues. You're going to be able to combat any challenges, any sort of downturn in the market. And so we've stayed relatively healthy, but it has softened. It has softened. There's national factors we can't control. Interest rates and some insurance issues and stuff like that have definitely softened the market. But the energy is there, the buzz is there. I still see new businesses opening up, businesses shifting and trying new things. Office leasing seems good to go. Again, Jim Moeller came on the show and said they're still getting a lot of office lease action. And so I think the energy and the buzz is still here to keep us sustained through any sort of downturn we might have.
I think I agree with you largely there, but we know that it's a double-edged sword with all of that growth, and we deal with affordability issues, and prices have pulled back a little bit, but not substantially. Transportation. I mean, how do we keep the engine moving without exacerbating it, like kind of killing the golden goose?
It definitely is a double-edged sword. I mean, I've been stabbed by it, cut by it myself. It's like houses have appreciated. Just real estate in general has probably appreciated at a minimum of 100% across any given neighborhood in the last 6 years or so since COVID. And so when you have that dramatic of an increase in price, it's going to present so many challenges, especially for people that are looking for housing. So it's really created this unbelievable, unprecedented demand.
Well, the first time home buyer is now 40 years old.
Crushing them. Yeah. And my wife and I bought a house last summer, and I paid at least double what I thought I would pay when she became my girlfriend 6 or 7 years ago. When you start planning for the future, you have an idea in mind. I did not think we'd have to spend that much money to get what we got, but we are where we are. And I don't think it's going back, unfortunately.
No, I don't see it happening either. So, I mean, you speak with a lot of people on your podcast. What's a common thread amongst all the developers that you talk about or you talk with that makes them successful?
That makes them successful. The ambition and the creativity to move forward on their idea and sort of not disregard, but push through the challenges that come with creating everything these people have created, whether it's Jeff Vennick building all these buildings, or, a restaurateur opening an interesting new concept. Most all of them say, had I known what I know now, I would have never done it, So
it's just being naive a little bit to a certain degree?
Maybe naive, or maybe just ambitious about their idea. These creative people have these concepts that they really want to turn into reality, and they just go for it and they do it and push through the challenges.
Where does fear come in?
Oh man, fear. They're all fearful. I'm fearful. Every deal I buy and every move I make, there's questions always come up, in speculative real estate, especially, when you're buying a property is I'm kind of dealing with that right now. I've got a property I'm trying to redevelop, and it's on the edge of a market. And so I'm a sort of pioneer, right? And when I talk to businesses, there's apprehension there. And so you have those reservations in yourself. Did I really make the right move? But you just have to believe in your idea and what you're trying to create. And when the fear comes up, just try to move through it.
Okay. Just ignore it the best you can? Or?
Recognize that it's a real fear.
Yeah.
Like, fear is good because it might point to, hey, that's an issue I need to correct or take care of. But at the end of the day, you can't let it squash you. And all these people I've had on my show say the same thing. Again, if I had known that those fears would be there, I probably wouldn't have done it because I would have been too scared, right? But they just pushed through it.
I'd say, so my personal journey, I left banking in 2005. So pre-great financial crisis, I just was financing, projects left and right. And I'd say, like, I don't know, arrogantly, I thought, I'm like, I could do this myself.
Yeah.
So I had 2 infill townhome developments. And as you can imagine, I mean, the timing was just, it couldn't have been worse. So I kind of refer to that as my master's in real estate, and had to work through. Went back to banking before everything crashed, but ended up being in banking and then working out my bad loans, and then dealing with people with their bad loans. I mean, it was just kind of a wild time, and that changed my perspective. I'm like, I'm okay with having a salaried job and helping guys like you build things and living vicariously through you. And
I think both types of people are important. I think for me, I could never have a job with those constraints. I have to express my creativity, and even if I get squashed or make the wrong move, which I certainly have, I think it's better to explore. Personally, I think it's better to explore that creativity and have a vision for something and try to express that vision to its full potential.
Yeah, bring it to life.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your project at all?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what are you working on?
Yeah, I bought the old River Heights Cleaners building, 3918 North Boulevard in Riverside Heights. And John Hernandez owned that business for a long, long time, for 30 years, and he was retiring. And he, had some health issues, as we all do as we grow older, and just decided, I want to spend more time with family and sell the business and sell the real estate. And so the building popped up for sale, and I met with him. And I thought it was a fantastic property. It was newer built. It was built.
Did you buy the business too?
No.
Okay, so you're not in the dry cleaning business.
No, he actually offered it, and I considered it for a second because it's lucrative, it's established, but I'm just not in that business. I can't.
It's a different animal.
Yeah, it's a different animal. I'm just a real estate guy. But what I did do on that note was I said, hey, why don't you guys stay? Maybe we work out some deal where you can stay long term. Maybe it's for a couple years or whatever, but this community loves this dry cleaner, and this building is a dry cleaning plant. So it has the machines and all the chemicals and all the things they do in dry cleaning.
Also comes with contamination risk.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of money to study this site.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but we've got no contamination. Good. And so I said, hey, look, let's get all the equipment removed. Let's do a cleanup. And sort of in the meantime, let's just do pickup drop off. And you guys can stay month to month. And your employees can keep your jobs there. And they had worked there for over 20 years. And so we just set up a deal where they're still operating. People are still dropping clothes off and picking them up, and they're happy and the community's happy. And then I'm sort of behind the scenes cleaning up the property, getting all the equipment removed, doing whatever cleanup necessary, and then hopefully starting the beginning of next year, market the property. My goal would be to keep the laundry tenant there and a portion of the building, and then do some sort of a cafe coffee shop, because Riverside Heights, I've had coffees lately in the last few weeks, and randomly it'll pop up like, oh, my, boss is building a custom home in Riverside Heights, or when I look at the data on MLS, more homes over $1 million have sold in Riverside Heights in the last 500 days than anywhere in Tampa,
I would say
excluding
it's
South
up and
Tampa.
Coming, but I mean, I think it's
it's there,
especially right on the river.
100%. Residential usually comes before commercial, right? And so you have this fantastic location right next to Armature Works. You've got people paying $1.2 million, $1.5 million or more for homes, but there's no coffee shop they can kind of go to besides maybe Armature Works, right? Or Seminole Heights, which has a ton of great options, right? That's like foodie coffee paradise, but nothing really in Riverside Heights.
That's a great point.
And so that's my vision to bring to that community is some good neighborhood retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see you being successful there. So,
yeah.
Good luck.
It's all a bet, at the end of the day.
You mentioned Tampa Heights. What do you think about a lot of that? The newer construction there is very modern. And there is something unique about, having, historical 100-year home next to something that's modern. But I mean, given your family history, maybe you're a history fan. I don't know if I like it or not. I kind of cringe sometimes. I mean, I wish we could do a better job of preserving like Seminole Heights. But then it's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think quality speaks for itself. I think what we both would agree is the modern, that's like the frame stucco flat, no architectural elements, no wood elements, no metal, interesting design
Yeah, it looks
elements.
like an office building. You know?
Yeah, it looks like a crappy box. It's crappy construction. It's crappy, lazy design. Now, another double-edged sword is then it's more affordable for people, right? So the further you push in design, usually the more expensive it gets. But I think in general, quality speaks for itself. And so if you do have a modern home, which like right around this neighborhood here in Hyde Park, you do have more modern, more contemporary homes that are ultra high quality, that use stone elements and wood elements to soften some of those modern stark white details. And it actually can work. It just has to be quality. So I totally see what you're saying, and I agree. If you've got these craftsman bungalow homes, and then right next door is this like crappy, lazy developer modern air quote, right? Yeah, that's not going to jive.
Well, I think that's what gets the associations frustrated.
For sure.
And coming out in T-shirts and protesting.
Yeah, I would be right there with them. I mean, I think anything that doesn't include any sort of attention to detail or quality, I think all of us look at that and are like, meh, like, right? It's like no one's excited about that.
But yet somebody buys it, which is amazing.
Somebody buys it.
It's just we don't have enough inventory when I see for some of the prices they go for, and I'm like, that's a sign that we're underserved in the market. In terms of conversations you have about the development process and policy, is there something you would change in Tampa if you could change it?
Oh, big time. Yeah. The first thing to recognize is that the people that work at the city of Tampa do a great job for the resources they have. I mean, these are good people that work for a local government, and they're trying to be a part of something and build something. But the problem is they operate under a broken code, an antiquated code that doesn't work for today's sort of development standards, culture standards. It was last comprehensively rewritten in 1987. So you've got this sort of 40-year-old code that is a more suburban-esque design standard. It's got certain parking minimums that are inappropriate for certain locations. It doesn't have enough form standards in certain areas. It does have form overlays in areas like Seminole Heights and stuff that protect some of the areas that we talked about earlier. It just needs to be comprehensively rewritten. And the great news is the city's working on that. And Abby Feely's department has spearheaded that issue. They've hired a private consultant, Clarion, who rewrites codes for municipalities all around the country. And I think when that gets rewritten to today's standard, and it makes a process more clear for not only developers and investors, but also just for people, the neighbors that live in these communities or prospective home buyers. Like, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a program where you look at a neighborhood and click on a map on the commercial corridor and see what could be built there?
That'd be great.
What are the entitlements, for this neighborhood, so that it's very clear for everyone.
The EDC has talked about that for years.
I think they're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
I think they're going to make it happen with the land development code rewrite. It's on pause, right? I'm actually on the advisory team, so I'm a part of it, and I'm really excited to dive into it deeper. It's been sort of put on pause because Hillsborough County is doing their comprehensive plan. The state makes you every once in a while redo your comprehensive plan and update it. So the city's sort of waiting on the county to finish that before the city kicks things off. But man, when that thing is streamlined and greased up and everyone has a clear understanding, the neighbors, the developers, everybody, that will make things move a lot more efficiently.
Oh, well, I'm encouraged to hear that. I'm encouraged to hear that you're on the advisory committee. So thanks for your service there. What's your take on the increase in impact fees?
Absolutely necessary. I mean, they haven't been.
How long has it been? It's been,
has it been since the 80s?
Decades, right? Yeah.
I think it's been a long, long time. It's definitely overdue. But, just as we talked about earlier in the conversation about a shock to the system, right? 100% housing increase in price in only 5 or 6 years. You don't want to do the same thing to impact fees. You don't want to just drop the hammer on these builders, right? You stair step it in a way that they can take a bite out of that doesn't have economic impact. But yeah, absolutely, they need to be increased. You just maybe implement it over a few years.
That's, to make it a little bit more palatable. But I would say, at the end of the day, all of that does get passed on to the consumer anyway. Developers need to make their margins. They're running a business. So, but to do that all at once, it would kill the market.
Well, The good news is I think Tampa has something figured out that many municipalities long for, and that is we have private sector excitement on an unprecedented level. And so I don't think it would really stop development. A couple people on my show have said that. I don't really believe that, but I do believe it would be detrimental to affordability, because when costs are immediately implemented, they're immediately put on the consumer. Mm-hmm. But if you implement them over time, with other market conditions at play, interest rates being reduced, insurance leveling out, et cetera, which is happening, it might not get passed on to the consumer necessarily. It might just flow right into the market, which I think is the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've had Daryl Shaw talking about Gasworx. Mm-hmm. Your family has a lot of history in Ebor City. What's your feeling about that project?
Oh my gosh. I think we are so lucky to have a team spearheading a project of that size, with the experience, with the capital necessary to execute it, with the land ownership there, who actually gives a crap about, I know I can't swear on this podcast.
We can cut it out.
gives a crap about the community, because it's a very historically sensitive area.
Yeah.
It has a story to tell. And that development team has made it very clear that they really do care, and they're going to use quality materials and craftsmanship, and they are redoing all the infrastructure in the area. They're adding a trolley stop. They're redoing an entire city park and giving it to the city, and maintaining that park on their own dime. They're just doing things that tell me that I can trust them. And for me, so many families in this city have my same story. My family came here from Sicily and to Ebor City and rolled cigars. And so for these new people that were not born here to come into the city and recognize that history and express it in their project, that makes me feel confident that the project will be respectful as it grows and develops.
They seem to have done so far, and as they're planning, integrating into the community. And what's kind of unique, compare and contrast that to Water Street, which was almost kind of a blank slate, right?
Yeah.
Like we just got to tear it all down, build new, put in all the infrastructure, put in the streets. Whereas this, you've got an existing neighborhood and community that you need to be considerate of. And I think to your point, I think they're doing a good job of integrating all that.
Yeah, Water Street especially was a blank slate, right? They didn't necessarily have a story to tell. You've got some history there. Like if you notice, there's a little pocket dog park right next to Orange Theory on Meridian. It says, I think it's Bruce's Juices. That was an old juicer company. So they did a mural about that. There's actually a ton of Black history. Black families settled that area of downtown over 100 years ago. But for the most part, there's definitely not this deep cultural heritage like there is in Ebor. So they had an opportunity at Water Street to kind of like create the vision in whatever way they wanted to.
What do you think about their future phases?
Well, they're doing the new parking garage, which you brought up transportation earlier, and we didn't get to touch on it. But that's sort of unfortunate. I would have rather seen that be a building, but you got to get people to these developments, right? And you got to connect them together. And
we're still depending on cars, unfortunately.
100%. And we will for a long time, and so for them to be successful in their future phases, they've got a plan for that. So they've done a parking garage, but I think in general, they're going to be very successful. They own all that property, many, many more acres. Water Street as it sits is barely a third built out in terms of the entire project. So you've got a lot. It's so incredible. You've probably got decades of growth right there. Whether those future phases happen this cycle, I doubt it. I think they're trying to get their feet steady and get those tenants successful. And you've had tenants come and go, and you've had Chipotle move in, which is a national tenant, which they need. They need that for financing, right? That gives you a stronger balance sheet when you have that national tenant. So I think they're being strategic about phase one. Getting all that spoken for, really working out the kinks, getting that new parking garage built so they can get some more people in the district, along with more retail. And I think they're doing like a rooftop bar of some sort.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that.
Like
yeah,
which will be really cool. But I think they're going to be extremely successful. I think it's going to be great. I don't think it's going to happen next year. I think they're probably going to take some time to build out phase two, future phases.
How do you feel about the connectivity, or maybe the lack of connectivity? It feels like we're building little islands, whereas, St. Pete, different layout, but I mean, over the years, I mean, it's very walkable. You could, start at the waterfront and you can walk for 20 blocks and still, I mean, there's restaurants, bars, offices where, I mean, you've got Ebor, you've got Water Street, you've got the Heights. I mean, it just feels that we don't have that connectivity yet in Tampa.
Well, when the city first really started to grow over 100 years ago, you didn't have the same code you have today, right? And so today you have all the life safety code, fire code, parking code, this code, that code, right? And so a lot of these commercial properties, these smaller commercial properties that are in between these larger developments are not owned by these like ultra wealthy people. Those are going to be the mom and pop developers. Those are going to be the little coffee shop that wants to build a little structure and open up a coffee shop or a boutique or whatever that may be. And I don't know how you're going to do that on these commercial properties when you deal with a suburban code that doesn't fit within a city. So you're not going to see development happen until the process is a little more smooth. Okay. It's unbelievably expensive to do anything. That little project I have is going to cost a crazy amount of money for what it is. And the only reason I'm doing it is to grow the community. That's my career. Like, I just want to keep growing this city and rebuilding this city and be a part of all this. And it's a hell of a lot of money to spend before you serve a first cup of coffee, because I have to do my work to redevelop that building. Then the tenant has to come in and build out the coffee shop. It's like, it's a lot of money.
Well, you're pioneering, but there is something to be said for being first too, if you're successful.
There is, and there's the risk reward there, right? But the point about the connectivity is, you're not going to see these commercial corridors, Dale Mabry, Manhattan, McDill, like Palmacia. That should be like Winter Park right there. It should be a wide sidewalk district with shaded trees, and those commercial properties should be redeveloped. I mean, a lot of the commercial corridors in Tampa are really, really run down. And it's just because if you buy some of these commercial properties with today's code standards, it's just difficult to really build something special. And certain areas, it doesn't make sense to push the envelope, but in the urban core, like you're talking about these larger projects with nothing in between, we really need to think about opening up some of the parking minimums, for example, some of the setback requirements. I just had a guy on my show yesterday. He's a developer. The episode will come out in like a month or so. But, like, he would love to put a little 1,500, 2,000 square foot retail coffee shop within his development. He's in the urban core. But by the time you add in the ADA requirement, the setback requirement, you got to have the grease trap and the this and the fire code and the parking spaces. It's like, okay, I can't put it in. Yeah. So if he can't put it in, and he's a medium-sized, small developer, I don't know how you're going to develop all the in-between. You've got Gasworx and Water Street and what's happening in Tampa Heights with Ellison and the YMCA. How are you going to get everyone in between to grow and develop? How are we going to rebuild our city if it's so expensive and so almost impossible to do so? You're just not.
Leaving me in a very positive place right now. But that's the reality. And hopefully some of that zoning will...
It is positive, though, because like I said, the city recognizes that.
Yes,
and they're redoing that land development code.
So if you were mayor, or maybe king for a day, and you could put the Race Stadium anywhere, where would you put it?
Oh, my God. Well, Ebor, right? I think the team has
like Ebor Harbor.
Ebor Harbor. Okay. All right. Well, I had Daryl on the show and I asked him, can if the deal could be made, would you put the stadium at Gasworx? And he says, no, absolutely not. We're sort of past that. They've got a whole plan there that they're moving
initially
forward on.
There was like a plan B rendering that got
which was exciting.
Released.
Yeah, which was super exciting. And it's not going to be at Gasworx, but it could be at Ebor Harbor. And I think if that ownership group really wants to create an authentic Wrigleyville, baseball-oriented, true walkable neighborhood, they would choose Ebor Harbor. You could create, I'll use the word like a Disney World version of it at a larger site, like the Battery in Atlanta, and put like a Buffalo Wild Wings there and kind of put apartments and kind of make it like a mixed use type thing. Sure, yeah, you could do that. And it would probably be financially successful, but you're not going to have the authentic nature of a true urban environment.
Yeah, the true urban baseball stadium.
My brain maybe is with like an HCC site. I think that makes the most sense from what the owners have said they're looking for. And it's all real estate people, by the way.
Yeah.
The ownership, it's
they get 120 acres there, and if they want that true entertainment
Mm-hmm.
center that they can capitalize on, that makes a lot more sense than just.
It does.
Yeah.
So my brain is with that site, HCC off Dale Mabry, but I think my heart's with Ebor. Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about the your podcast.
Sure.
So you started just highlighting your listings and projects you're working on. How did it evolve?
I started the page. I was looking for an Instagram page, and I was like, Tampa real estate, that's taken. What else is out there? And I just typed in Tampa Bay developer, and it was not taken. I was totally shocked. I was like, that's a cool name. I can't believe it's not taken. So I took it like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was just posting some of, I was like flipping houses, and I owned a little Section 8 housing portfolio. I would fix these apartments up and rent them out. I eventually sold it to an investor, put some of my commercial properties I was renovating on there, and then I was like, let me do something deeper that is almost like a marketing platform for my brokerage. And I've always wanted to do some sort of media. I don't know I never knew what that would be, but some sort of media, like whatever. So I was like, podcast seems cool. It's a deeper way to talk about things. A lot of brokerages and realtors at the time were doing content, trending content. And I was like, I don't want to necessarily do that. So I just was like, yeah, let's do a podcast. What do we call it? Well, I've got this Instagram page called Tampa Bay Developer. I guess we'll just call it Tampa Bay Developer Podcast. There wasn't a lot of thought. It was just like, I had an old camera in my office. I sat down in my conference room like you guys have here. I had a kid who was licensed with me to hook it all up, and hey dude, order the whatever equipment you can find online. And we just hooked it up and hit record, And I naively thought in the beginning that maybe no one cared about some of those like nerdy conversations I have about transportation and all this stuff. Turns out a lot of people care.
They do,
which is great. That's one thing too about this community. Like everyone really, really wants to see us shine. I think that's a beautiful thing we have. But I just had on some friends, a developer friend, a finance guy, an architect, and then Joe Fall reached out, and he's Beta Bay contracting, and he's a pretty big GC, and I was like, wow, that guy wants to talk to me on my show, cool. And that kind of sparked the idea I should just reach out. Like no one's really doing what I'm doing. Let me just reach out to anyone and everyone.
So was that the catalyst? You're like, okay, I could have something bigger here.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. A little bit, but it's always been I just really, I would have the conversation I have with someone on my show as if I would have over coffee.
Yeah.
I don't have a script. I don't try to change anything about what I do. I just have a genuine conversation about what they're doing in the community, how it integrates with the bigger picture. And then we just talk about the future sort of ambition of this region. We have something really, really exciting and special here. That's why so many people care. It's because people know that there's a huge opportunity. So it was all organic, man. And it's been a freaking wild ride, and it's been fun. And as long as it's fun, I'll keep doing it, so.
How do you decide who sits across the chair from you?
Oh man.
I mean, you started with friends, but I'm sure, like us, I mean, people reach out to us all the time. And want to come on.
Yeah, we do have a lot of people that reach out, and I try to be as selective as I can. I want to be as diverse as I can too in topics. If I have on someone who is a huge developer, I also want to have on a small business in that community to try to talk about how they feel. Like you guys have been in this community for 20 years in this business. How do you feel about the growth coming into the area? How are you going to integrate? How are you going to survive? I've had on Black historians that talk about the Spaniards that came to this community. Scott Daichi, who wrote Cigar City Mafia. Has he been on your show?
No.
He would be a great guest if you want to dig into that history a little bit more. But talking about the mafia in Tampa, and I just try to keep it diverse and be selective. I try to do as much research on people as I can to have a good show. But in the general sense, I love to just have that genuine conversation.
Well, you do a great job at it. I mean, it's just earnest. I mean, I admire the fact that it's it's like 3 hours long. And I'm like, I'm it exhausts me just thinking about it. I mean, these are like 30 to 45 minutes.
It's long, but you know what? You've got to go long to talk about some of these details. I don't really like when I have a guy like Jeff Vinnick or Daryl Shaw on who are doing these unbelievably ambitious things in this community. I don't care about, well, how many square feet are you building and what is the cost and who are you? No, I don't really care. I want to know why. I want to know why you're doing what you're doing. Like, why, Daryl, are you making this multi-$100 million bet on this community? You don't have to do this. Mm-hmm. You certainly don't have to do it with the quality. They're spending millions of dollars more than they have to just so it's built the right way, mm-hmm. and just so it looks and feels the right way. Yeah. I want to know why. You know, I want to know why they care. Yeah, so I love that. That's sort of my North Star. Okay. You know, find out, dig into people and figure out why they're doing what they're doing.
And are they receptive? I mean, I was amazed, and you kind of changed my paradigm a little bit too, because I saw Vinnick and I was like, I didn't even think to ask Vinnick. And I'm like, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And incidentally, I'll share with you kind of inside too. I know Jane personally. I should have reached out to Jane individually, but I reached out to her people. I'm like, I'll go through the proper channels, and they're going to want to know who she's talking to. And they're like, we don't do podcasts. And like 3 weeks later, she was on your podcast, and I'm like, well, shoot. Oh, but then it was no. I'm like, I didn't reach out, and I mean, it would obviously we don't need to have her on like twice in a month. That would have made any sense, but no, Bob Buckhorn was like another one that, and I've got a long relationship with Bob, and reached out, and he kind of shocked me and announced that he was running for mayor, which was not expected. I just wanted to talk about what he thought about the evolution of development and his footprints on the city, and so that was a nice surprise. I mean, I guess 2 questions in that. How do you get some of those names, and then second, has anybody surprised you?
How do I get the names? I just ask. I think because this has been an organic process, and I started out with friends and then larger contractors, maybe there's this stair step to this thing, mm-hmm. where air quote bigger gas see the show. Oh, that guy's been on. I feel comfortable going on. I don't know. I just ask. I just say, hey, I want to have an organic conversation about how you see the future of this city and this region. And I've been lucky enough for people to say yes.
Yeah, no, I've kind of found the same. It's been interesting that, mm-hmm. and I think there is something to that. I mean, they see other people on the show, and so they're willing to do it, willing to be a part of it, and then other people see that and reach out to you, and it's been fun to see yours grow, and it's also been interesting to see ours grow, and I think there's some overlap there. But
that's why I'm here today. I want to help anyone who wants to have conversations about this region amplify, so that's why I did the show today. Is like, I think the key, what we need as a community as we grow and develop is conversation. We need to talk about these challenges. We can't let the transportation issue go on longer for the next 30. I mean, we've been talking about that, or trying to talk about it, for 30 years in this community. Yes. And I think with a platform like this, where I can sit down with, and I mean this in like the most loving way, like the biggest transportation nerd ever, right? Brad over at Pinellas Suncoast Transit, mm-hmm. Authority. I sit him down for 2 hours, and we get into the nitty gritty about transportation and all the nuances and the reason why we can't do X, Y, Z. There's never, Fox 13 can't do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they actually have started to do a podcast format, which I think is fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's going to take those really detailed conversations for the public, the community to understand, and me included. I'm learning with my viewers at the same time, right? I think it's cool the viewers and the listeners get to be in the room with mm-hmm. me as we talk, but we're never going to advance if we don't talk about these issues and we don't understand why things are the way they are. Some of the reasons we can't do things like, well, why doesn't the city redo Bayshore Boulevard? We don't own Bayshore Boulevard. The county owns Bayshore Boulevard. Stuff like that. The public needs to understand the real story. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, you're also a new dad.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
So what kind of community do you want your kids to grow up in? Well, when you had to kind of design it.
Yeah, it's a good question.
What's the future look like?
I've thought a lot about that. I think any new dad thinks about that immediately. We moved into our house last summer. My firstborn was a year old, and I paid a lot of money for my house. again, more than I thought I would have to. And I thought, what is my son going to pay when he's in his 30s for a house with his wife?
I've got kids
or husband
that are in their 20s, right?
But you know, it's like it's gonna be unbelievably expensive. And whatever we can do as a community to make it more approachable and affordable for people in general. And that's not just buying homes. I talked earlier about the coffee shop example, or any sort of small business. Anyone that's ambitious, you know, we want to be able to say yes to ambitious people. You know, ambitious people built the building we're in. You know, they built Henry Plant came here and built the University of Tampa, that Tampa Bay Hotel, that unbelievable architecture. You know, Vicente Ebor came here and had a vision. Hugh Martinez bought the forest. Nobody wanted the land, the 200 or 300 acres across the Hillsborough River that is now West Tampa. It was the fastest growing city in Florida at the time, and had more people living in it than the capital by the time it was annexed into the city. So this whole community is built on ambitious people. And the community I see in the future is one that says yes to those ambitious people. You know, if you want to open up a little coffee shop, barbershop, boutique, it's going to be as easy as it can be to do that, as long as you're keeping straight with the rules and all that. But that's going to be the difference between success and failure for us. Can our kids afford houses when they grow up? You know, can they afford to live here? Can they have good jobs? And if they're ambitious enough to start something, can they reasonably do it without already having means? You know, can someone with an extra few bucks start a coffee shop in this city? And again, right now it's difficult with the codes. Those are being worked on. But the vision I see in the future is it's just easier for everyone to live here.
So you sound like someone that could run for office. You do come from political royalty. Any thought about throwing your hat in the ring at some point?
Well, I have young kids, and they are the most important thing to me. So if I was to get into public service, I would have to make sure that nothing I do screws that up. My father and grandfather did that job, and I know it was challenging in that regard. And I don't, I don't necessarily want to go down a path that goes against time with my kids, you know. But this city has been unbelievable to my family, you know, since my great-great-grandparents came here and rolled cigars, and their children opened a hardware store, and politicians would visit them and the community would visit them. And then the little boy that grew up in that store ended up becoming the mayor, and then his son becomes a judge. And then I start a silly little podcast and have all these people listen to it. So this community's been so good to my family for generations. If I can serve publicly, if I can be a part of that, I would be honored. Absolutely.
Well, I look forward to that day if it should happen. You have a supporter here.
Thank you.
We don't go 3 hours. We try to wrap it up pretty quick and be concise. But anything else you want to leave our listeners and viewers with?
I mean, thank you, man. Thank you for doing this. You didn't have to do this at all, right? You said a commercial banker. And you're ambitious enough to start something here. So thank you for having conversations on top of mine, in front of mine, behind mine, or conversations I can't have.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, because I am a fan. So,
well, it was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Garrett, thanks for coming on Money Market. You can find the Money Market Podcast at Bank of Tampa online and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and on X. And before you leave, make sure you hit that like, follow, or subscribe button. And until next time, we'll see you around in the Money Market.